Okay, looks like I lost you for a second, but we're back dealing with finishing touches. So I've identified that I've got a little bit more material on the top right and the bottom left. So removing those elements, and I think I should be in good shape. Except for I need to plane it this way. Okay, good. So by taking off just the top, I'm not hearing any of that bottom engage. Usually if it's those two bottom corners, you'll hear a really distinct cluck or thud. This is pretty good. So I'm trying to force this in just a little bit deeper than it wants to be, because that will show me any areas that start to tighten up on the interior of this. And then once I've got that, then I can start doing my final adjustments. And I might have said that once before, but this time I mean it. Looking at all the surfaces here. Sorry, I think I'm out of frame. Okay. So I identified quite a few little areas, but I only really want to start removing material from one of those at a time. If I do all of these areas where my pencil lines are, then I'm guaranteed to take off too much. Come on, plane. I knew a plane blade was in here. There we go. Okay. So I'm trying to remove any bit of stickiness that's happening here. I think I'm really close to being where I want to be. So thinking about what you're going to be leaving when you step away from the fitting of this is that there is always going to be some element of movement. We talked about selecting quarter saw material for the sidewalls. I think that helps, but depending on what the drawer front is made of, that can also start to impose some movement on us. The other thing is we don't know if this is a freestanding piece of furniture, if it's going to stay in the same environment that it was built in, and that starts to create some challenges. So we always need to leave some element of room for expansion here. And so once I've got this well fitting now, and let me also reiterate, I also think about the time of year when I assemble these. Because if I build this in the middle of winter, then I know that I'm going to have trouble several months down the road with regardless of where this thing ends up. So being sensitive and aware of that is important. And also allowing for it is pretty huge. So giving a little bit more material after I get a proper fit or taking off a little bit more material. Once I've gotten that fit, it is always wise. Alright, we're pretty good now. Alright, so it's still a little fussy. So in order to correct that, I want to wax the heck out of the drawer itself now. There's already wax inside the carcass. This is not going to hurt any more fitting that needs to happen or any interaction or engagement inside of the carcass. Wax all of the mating surfaces. The other thing about this is I can't use any solvent finishes on these areas as we talked about, but I really don't want to do that on the interior of the drawer as well. If I used a solvent finish inside of this drawer, then every time you open up that drawer, you're going to get a smell or a whiff of that off-gassing, because if I use that finish in here, it's still trying to dry, it's still trying to cure, but there's nowhere for it to go, so it just creates this cloud. You open up the drawer and then it kind of hits you in this really horrible way. So I just use wax on my drawers. And if I were really hard pressed for putting a finish on the interior of this, again, not on the mating surfaces, but on the interior of the drawer bottom, I would use a water-based finish. And that seems to be fairly decent as far as durability, but even shellac is going to be fairly nasty for that. Cool. Okay. So I have a little bit more tweaking to deal with, but I don't want to prolong this video. Many of you are saying too late. Alright, so a couple things I want to do. I want to treat the corners and deal with those so that I have the least amount of resistance or drag. So I will knock down these back corners first. This really doesn't create any difficulty as far as where this drawer runs into this environment. So mating surfaces, it just eases any amount of, as this drawer is sliding in and out, it's, if you have a looser fitting drawer, if that was a really crisp corner, it would always find the inside of that carcass, so it'll help it to run a little bit more smoothly. And so, alright, so I'm going to do that. The other thing I want to do, be mindful of, is the amount of shadow that I've created. I took off a little bit more material here and here, and I'll probably true that up as well. But I want to have the appearance, after I've done all the final fitting and adjustment pieces, I want to create the appearance that I've got a nice consistent shadow all the way around this drawer front. And so to do that, I'll ease these corners. You can do it with sanding block as well, but tearing these things off makes any irregularity that you may have run into seem unnoticeable. And the difference between a good woodworker and a great one is simply the ability to repair your mistakes or not draw attention to them. So once I've done that, now we have a bit more consistent shadows. Again, once I'm able to square this thing up with the bottom. Cool. Alright. So I'm going to let this wax dry a little bit more. It's still a little bit soft and sticky, but once that dries and all of the solvent or the petroleum dissolves, then I'm going to get just this really smooth surface to ride against, and then I can do my final fitting. But that's how you do it. That's how you fit drawers in a runner kicker piston style construction. Thanks for watching.